You are listening to the GMO Truth, straight out of the Walk a Mile Project, brought to you by nonprofit film company Change the World Films. Tune in here to discover the truth and change the world together. Welcome to GMO Truth number 5. This is Eric Battersby, and I am very excited today to bring you some excerpts from our first on-location filming. We interviewed Canadian farmer Abe Wiens while he was still vacationing here in sunny Arizona. So this episode, we're going to take a brief break from our GMO research sequence, and instead we're introducing one of the really important core concepts of the Walk a Mile Project, which is to simply let you walk a mile in another person's shoes for a while just to help all of us gain a little more perspective. Now, I wish we were filming this segment on Abe's farm up in Canada, where we could really walk a mile in his shoes, but when the opportunity arose to interview him right away locally, before we'd even mobilized our regular film crew, we absolutely had to take it. So understand, this was a ragtag crew of 3 with a bunch of little hiccups involved, as usually is the case when you're rolling short-handed, but as you'll see, we actually kind of pulled it off. It's far from perfect, but we pulled it off. So this episode, which I think everyone will really enjoy, is essentially a complete detour from our current path. And that's mostly just because we're much earlier into our GMO research than being at the point where we're hitting the ground looking into current farming methods. So Abe's interview here will very likely fit into a later point with our research, and parts of it will probably appear in the documentary itself. But as is the nature with filmmaking, you film when it's best to film. Okay, 2 really quick updates before I jump into the video. First off, this podcast officially kicks off our subscriber bonus content at walkamileproject.com. which just means subscribers get to access the GMO Truth podcast 2 days earlier than anyone else. We'll have an extra video from today's interview headed into our bonus content as well in the next week or 2, and the more content we create, the more spin-offs of that content we'll be putting into the subscribers bonus section. And speaking of bonus content, that brings me to the second update. April and May are the key months for Change the World Films donor recruitment. If you are passionate about getting to the truth behind GMOs once and for all, so we can resolve this situation and move forward, then please head over to walkamileproject.com and make a straight donation or sign up to be a subscriber, which is also a donation. You can either use one of our many subscription options or just donate directly, any amount you would like. If you'd prefer to send us a check, you can send that directly to Change the World Films, P.O. Box 13538, Mesa, Arizona 85216. And remember, we are a 501c3 approved organization, so all donations are tax deductible. And don't worry, I will not turn the GMO Truth into a donor pitch fest. That's not how we do things around here. We don't do pledge drives or anything like that, but we do absolutely work our tails off and always, always, always appreciate your donations that help us meet our budget every year so we can keep the Walk a Mile Project humming right along at a nice, brisk pace. So there's our 2 quick updates. And now before I jump into our interview, I have got to show this video that it's on the website already, but and maybe I feel a little guilty, but this is a video that I have watched and laughed out loud at way too many times. That may sound a little strange, but to me this clip is a perfect example of why the Walk a Mile Project even exists. Here we have someone adamantly preaching the safety of glyphosate, to the point where he talks about drinking a whole quart of the stuff without harm, and then to the point where he actually says he would like to drink some of it. And here, take a look.
I do not believe that glyphosate in Argentina is causing increases in cancer. You can drink a whole quart of it and it won't hurt you.
You want to drink some? We have some here.
I'd be happy to, actually, but not really. But
not really?
I know it wouldn't hurt me.
If you say so, I have some glyphosate.
No, I'm not stupid.
Ah, okay. So you.
No, but I know
so it's dangerous, right?
No, people try to commit suicide with it and fail fairly regularly.
Tell the truth.
It's not dangerous to humans. No, it's not.
So you're ready to drink one glass of glyphosate?
No, I'm not an idiot. Interview me about golden rice. That's what I'm talking about. Okay, then it's finished. Then the interview is finished.
That's a good way to solve things.
Yeah. You're a complete jerk.
See, I'm laughing again, and that's probably the 20th time I've seen it. But it's a perfect example of this overcharged, what I call dumbest guy in the room syndrome, that all too often takes hold of the GMO controversy. Someone is all worked up and emotionally preaching their side of the argument. They make a charged statement, they get called on it directly, and then get all upset when they don't stand behind their own words. And here, the guy literally said you can drink a whole quart of this stuff, and then said he would like to drink some. And moments later, Even after saying, I know it wouldn't hurt me, he then reverses into a nervous no and proclaims that he's not an idiot. And for added fun, that the host is a complete jerk and he literally storms off. And I'm sorry, but people try to commit suicide with it and fail fairly regularly is one of the worst offenses for anything I've ever heard in my life. So what about the people who succeed unregularly? Do they not count in that equation? And by the way, when I say dumbest guy in the room syndrome, who's the dumbest guy in the room? The guy who thinks he knows everything. So to me, this video serves as kind of a 45-second microcosm of the entire emotionally charged GMO controversy. We start with the statement that glyphosate is not contributing to the cancer rise in Argentina. We proceed to it being proudly and steadfastly proclaimed so harmless that you can safely drink a quart of it. And then as soon as someone calls the emotional arguer out on their claim, they backpedal rapidly, refuse to stand by that claim, and then completely exit the conversation. And where does that leave those of us looking for the truth? Yeah, we're left wondering what the hell is really going on. I know in a way it's sad, but I'm sorry, I just can't help but laugh at how the voice of reason gets steamrolled sometimes in these conversations. All right, speaking of the voice of reason, that's our trademark here at the Whole Quart Project, so let's bring it back into the mix. And to that end, I'm about to introduce you to Abe Wiens, a Canadian farmer who grows 5 crops continuously. 4 of those are conventional, with the biggest one being durum wheat, and the 5th crop is GMO Canola, which is a very popular crop in Canada. Not surprisingly, since the can in canola actually stands for Canada, just in case you weren't aware of that little tidbit. And it's really rapeseed oil, by the way, regardless of what they like to call it. So here we go. Let's jump into the first video footage ever from the Whole Quart Project. So the first question I asked Abe was, how did you get into farming and when did you start?
I started farming with my father when I was 10 years old, helping haul grain and different things like that. And always knew in my heart that I wanted to be a farmer. I didn't really know what farming was all about, actually. But that was something that lingered in the back of my mind. And as I grew older, 1958, I was 16 years old, and my father rented me a quarter section of land. That was my introduction to farming. In 1958, I got 425 bushels of grain that I think I sold for $3 a bushel, so you can imagine how much money that was. I think I got all of $1,200 for a whole year's work, and that's all there was to it.
Was that a lot back then with the time? Was it a lot of money for what you were doing?
Well, it was okay. It wasn't that bad. I spent all my money on I took all my money and I went and I bought an electric guitar and amplifier because I thought I was going to be a country music star. I remember I went to a neighboring city, 150 miles away, with a couple of my buddies that were we had a band. And they wanted to go buy some new musical instruments. Well, when I got there, I saw this beautiful guitar. I paid $750 for it at that time. Fender guitar. I thought it was such a good idea. We were going to make piles of money playing in this band. And I already had a daughter at that time. And I think my son was just born. It was around 1970. So then on the way home, I started thinking, oh, what's my wife going to say about this guitar? Well, as I got closer to home, it didn't seem like a good idea anymore.
Did you keep going, or did you go turn around and take the guitar back?
No, I took it home. Kind of snuck it into the house, and all of a sudden, she noticed it. Well, what's this? Had to do a little explaining. But we were going to make money now.
Oh, the guitar was the key.
I don't think I made more than enough to pay for the guitar. That was about it. But then over the years, I got married in 1965, and in 1970, I had a son. And in 1980, he was 10 years old, and he says, I want to farm. And I said, really, yeah. And by that time, I was tired of farming together with my family. I wanted to go on my own. So ventured out on our own, and we lost some and we won some, and we kept going.
So when did you first get your farm then when you broke away? What year was that?
That would have been 1980.
Okay, so you've been doing it separately then for 35 years about.
35 years on my own, yeah.
So you've gotten paid a lot more than the country gig.
Yes. Yeah, that didn't work out.
Next question. What's the biggest concern for a farmer?
We changed our ways of farming back in about the early 90s. We were trying to control soil erosion caused by water and by wind. And we don't have a lot of topsoil in our land. We might have 6 inches of topsoil, probably at the very most. So you try and conserve as much of that as possible. I mean, once your soil blows away, you've got nothing.
I didn't realize that the wind was a problem.
Oh yeah, when you do a lot of tillage to control weeds, you're also pulverizing the soil, and as you pulverize it, there's a tendency for the wind to blow it away, and sometimes we get real good winds.
So that's another reason why the low-till farming methods are very friendly to the farmer.
Absolutely.
Because it can conserve your topsoil.
Erosion is probably the biggest concern.
Now the big debate, organic versus conventional versus GMO.
When I started farming with my father, if you want to consider using no fertilizer and no chemicals of any kind, we probably were organic farmers way back in the 1950s.
No fertilizer either?
No.
Oh, I didn't even know that.
We didn't start using fertilizer probably till the late 50s, early 60s. And as we saw the results from using fertilizer on our crops, the increase in yield, we started using more and more all the time. And now that we seed every acre every year, you have to add more and more fertilizer all the time to keep up with the soil nutrients that the plant needs.
Is that because something depletes them in the process every year?
Well, plants deplete nutrients out of the soil, yes.
Okay. So you've kind of grown, well, you're growing 2 of the 3 right now, and then you basically grew in a way organically. I'm sure now it's totally different than it was back then.
Oh, yeah. We didn't even consider it organic.
Yeah, back then there wasn't even any talk about
No.
any difference, right?
I guess all the crops that we grow now are conventional except for the canola, and that's a GMO variety.
Okay. And so you feel like it was a pretty equal success with all of them right now on the farm?
I think so, yes.
Okay.
And one of the other big questions, how does GMO canola perform versus conventional canola?
GM canola versus conventional canola. I would say that our yields have almost doubled with GMO canola.
Wow. That's a big jump.
That is a big jump. And that big jump translates into your bottom line, so that's why you grow it. If you can't make money, why grow it? That's what it's all about.
And then, so what about from a cost standpoint? Like, are you incurring more or less costs on the front end of that with the seed and the herbicide and stuff?
The GMO canola is definitely more expensive.
Is the seed more expensive?
The seed would be more expensive. But the seed is only about 4 pounds an acre of your, is all the seed that you actually use. Say 4 to 5 pounds in that area somewhere. So it's a small portion of what you're actually producing, because a good GMO canola crop will produce 40, 50 bushels an acre quite easily.
Okay. And then what about from the weed control standpoint? Are you spending more or less on that part of it than you did with the conventional?
I can't remember exactly what it costs to spray conventional canola, but I can say this: with the chemicals that we have on GMO canola, which is 2 kinds. There's either Roundup Ready, where you use a glyphosate to spray. It kills all the weeds. And with the Liberty Link canola varieties, which are your Invigors, those you spray with Liberty chemical, and it also kills all the weeds. Whereas in conventional canola, whatever chemicals you had did not do a complete job to get rid of your weeds. And you got to try and get rid of the weeds so it eliminates the competition for the plant if you want to get a good yield, especially when the plants are little.
So you're actually getting the herbicide use is actually helping your yields increase then, because it's killing off more of the weeds and keeping the plant.
Absolutely.
Okay. And then, but from a cost standpoint, you think it's significantly different either way, or is it just a guesstimate?
It probably costs us twice as much to grow GMO canola as it does conventional canola.
But the actual cost compared to obviously you're making more money regardless, like the profits.
Yeah, your yield is twice as much too.
So double the yield is a lot bigger than the difference between what it costs on the front.
That's correct.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And that's what you base it on. The bottom line that counts.
And you've been growing, is this your second or third season with canola, was it?
Oh no, we've grown it a lot longer than that.
Oh, you have? Okay.
Yeah.
How long do you think it's been?
At least 10 years.
Oh, wow. For some reason I thought you just started.
No.
So you've been doing it for 10 years.
We've been growing GM canola for at least 10 years.
What's the importance of proper crop rotation in weed control?
So during that time, have you seen you haven't seen any extra weed problems come up or resistance or anything? Like the glyphosate based herbicides are still doing the job fine every season?
I don't think there's any more weed resistance built up because you're seeding GMO canola than there is built up with conventional crops. Say your wheats or your lentils or peas, whatever else you're growing.
And the key is the way you rotate anyway, right? I mean,
that's right. That's
design?
the key.
Okay. So if there's a farm that's growing the same thing too often, that's when you're going to see the problem with the weeds. No matter what you're growing, you're going to run into the problem, right? Because they're going to develop resistance.
And you have to rotate your chemicals as well. Different groups use different group chemicals for certain crops as well, and for certain weeds.
Are there any other benefits to GMO canola?
One other comment I want to make about the GMO seed is the fact when you grow it, it seems to be nice to grow and it seems to ripen evenly, which is very important, because if canola doesn't ripen evenly, then you have a problem with green seed and green count. And to a layman that might not mean much, but the green count in the seed is what puts the color in your canola oil. So if you got too many green seeds, the canola oil turns green, and the consumer doesn't like that. They want nice, clean looking, clear oil, you see? And GMO canola has a tendency to ripen much more evenly. It's quicker to harvest because you can get at the crop quicker. You don't have to wait for the green count to go down. So you get it off the field quicker and get it in your bins.
What do you know why it does that? What makes it
do that?
Yeah, did they tell
I
you?
don't really know. All I know is that it seems to grow more even. The plants are more even, more consistent. All plants being the same size rather than having little plants and large plants and everything jumbled together.
Interesting. So you don't know if they market it, if they market that exact feature when they're selling the seeds?
I don't know if they do or not.
Okay.
When I deliver it to the guy that's buying it, he doesn't care whether it's GMO or regular canola or what it is. It all goes in the same bin.
Yeah, there's no differentiation on it, right?
No.
And here's one of those topics that pretty much concerns everyone. Let's talk about farmers and the use of chemicals.
Some people seem to think that all farmers do is fill up their sprayers with chemical and go out there and pour it on the crop, Well, when you're spending $20, $25 an acre for this chemical, you're not going to waste any. And the spraying equipment we have nowadays is all GPS controlled. It will not let you, if you sprayed till this edge right now, and when you turn around and come back, it will not double spray that. It will not let you turn the equipment on until you hit a part of the field where it hasn't been sprayed before.
That's impressive. I didn't know that existed.
Absolutely it does. We have that technology.
So it's in everyone's best interest that you're controlling the use of that chemical of your herbicides and pesticides, right? I mean, that's
sure. I think I'm concerned about it all the time when I grow crops. You know, I'm concerned about the chemical we use. But how else are you going to do it? You try to do it as well as you know how. You try not to over-applicate. You try not to under-applicate, because if you under-applicate, that's when you start getting resistance. And I can remember years ago when we first started putting on chemical, we would cut the rate by, say, 25%, not put as much chemical on. Well, then what happens is you don't completely kill the plant, and maybe some plants survive, and they develop resistance. Next year you do the same thing again. More plants survive, and eventually you start getting a crop of chemical-resistant weeds.
So the under-application can actually really contribute to it drastically.
I think under-application is just as harmful as over-application. So it's just something that, and I think most farmers are aware of it, you know. And most of the farmers nowadays are quite educated, and they're not dummies. They know what they're doing. They know what the risks are.
Well, and part of it is you have regulatory agencies that are telling you what it's safe to do, right? I mean, you're not going to know. You have to rely on what you're being told to be the truth, right?
Yes.
It's important.
Of course.
So as long as they're doing their jobs right, you have to feel like you're doing your job right. If you're being lied to about something, that's out of your control anyway.
That's out of our control.
And that's one thing I'm concerned about. If we haven't found that, we're really early. But if we get into something and we find out where that's happening, then that's the kind of thing. That's why when we started this project and I would talk to people, sometimes people would be like, "Wait, you're asking about GMOs?" I'm like, "Look, we're asking about the truth. We're like the farmers, the people that eat the food. We're all in this together. We're not, this."
Absolutely.
That's I think people tend to forget that sometimes when we're talking about this. That we're all together. The farmers are on the same page with the people. They're growing.
Absolutely, we are.
And you eat the food you're growing. We're all doing the same thing. So that's why it was really good that you wanted to talk to me, because you're the second GMO farmer I've talked to. Well, the first one to interview on camera, but I'm really appreciating getting all sides of this equation. Now that's how we figure out what the heck's going on, is actually talking to people that are doing it. That's why it's called the Walk a Mile Project, by the way. It's about walking a mile in another person's shoes. That's why I wanted to talk to you today, because it's kind of us walking a mile in your shoes for a little bit,
And my last question for Abe, it's been about 35 years. How do you feel about farming now?
I absolutely love it. That's all I've ever really done in my life that I really enjoyed. Yes, there was tough times, but when the good times hit, and now that my son is older, he does all the planning and stuff like that, and I don't have to do the planning anymore. I just come home and run the combine or the tractor or whatever I do, and I haul grain. We have 2 semi-trucks and a couple of conventional trucks, and now that all the equipment is GPS controlled, and that is really something. Like I was telling you earlier about the sprayer. I used to go out there and try and spray a field. You didn't have a clue where you were going because you can't see. There's no line anywhere. So you're just guessing, Sometimes you'd overlap a long ways. Sometimes you'd miss a whole strip. Now that everything is GPS controlled, you go out to the field. If you run out of chemical in a certain spot, it's on your screen. You can go home, refill, go back. You know exactly where to go. Machine won't let you overspray. You can turn the machine on. You can drive till you hit the spot where there's no chemical. It'll automatically start. You turn around, you hit the button, you go straight down the field. You can cover acres and acres with a high clearance sprayer in a few hours.
That's impressive. The only thing that doesn't like that are the weeds.
Yeah, that's right. The weeds don't like it.
So it's a lot different now than even in 1980 when you started, right?
Oh yes. Oh, it's so much more fun.
So regardless, even if you don't even talk about the GMOs, when you talk about all the scientific advancement in farming over the last few decades that you've been doing this, you've got to love it, right?
Absolutely.
Your life, if you did just a quick time capsule of 2015 versus 1980, you're loving farming much more now than you did back then, right?
Some people say it isn't like the olden days, and I always say, thank God it isn't, because I wouldn't be doing it if it was.
You wouldn't have kept doing it for as long, right?
But I just love the technology aspect of it. And that comes with a price. And that price has to be paid with larger yields and larger yields and larger yields to compensate.
But it's helping you get the larger yield when you're saving money in the long run, and when you're growing a better crop because you're doing everything more evenly, right? With both the seed and the pesticide. I mean, over time, it eventually pays for itself, right?
That's right. That's what it's all about.
Okay, a few quick closing comments before I wrap up GMO Truth number 5 here. First, I was a little surprised when I learned that Abe had been growing the GMO crop for 10 years because the family member that referred me to him said he thought the switch to GMO was just within the last few years. So here we have someone farming this kind of a crop for over a decade and saying everything is fine. I'm sure the pro-GMO camp was really celebrating that one. Obviously, there was a lot of pro-GMO that came out of that interview, but not so fast. And not so fast for either side to take anything away from one interview with one farmer regarding one crop. But first of all, like Abe already admitted, he's growing what he's told is safe. The big question of GMO safety is barely a blip on our radar at this point. Follow our substantial equivalence sequence and follow along with how we trace all these safety questions back to the start, and that's where we'll begin to see the truth regarding safety. So for either side of the GMO controversy, no one should be surprised by this interview. The companies that make the seeds and the herbicides, they make them so that the farmers get something out of it. That's the point. They don't stay in business if the farmers don't keep getting something out of it. Obviously, Abe has been getting something out of it for a decade strong. So if the regulatory agencies in Canada tell him that it's all good to do it, then he's going to do it. And no one should fault him for that. On the other hand, if there are serious environmental and health concerns with these crops and or these herbicides, then we can sure as hell fault the regulatory agencies for not watching our backs. We've got a lot more farmers to talk to of other GMO crops, of non-GMO crops, organic crops, and we've got a long way to go. So let me leave it at this for now. Abe is a really nice guy, and this was his story. He let us walk a mile in his shoes today. So we should appreciate that for what it was. And then in the meantime, over here at the Walk a Mile Project, we're going to get back to digging for the truth. We've got a long road ahead, so stay with us. We're still just getting started. And also, with anything that we're reporting on early in the game here, there should be no one should feel like there's a definitive answer or anything. I don't care if we're talking about something anti-GMO, pro-GMO. This is early in the game. We've got to keep the balanced voice of reason intact from start to finish here, which means no jumping the gun, no taking one little thing and running with it like we just discovered the truth. We've already gone through a lot of stuff, and at no point will you hear us proclaiming that the answer has been found. We've got so much more to do. So just keep that in mind with everyone. I know we have both pro and anti-GMO people that listen, which is great. That's the point. And I don't want either side getting too giddy over any one segment that we do. That's all I'm saying, because this was an unusually like one-sided piece, I felt. And not on purpose. It's just that Abe's a GMO farmer. So that's what we're going to get from Abe. Abe's going to tell us his side of the story as a GMO farmer. That's what we want. We want to hear that. And that's a great thing. That's exactly what we need here. We need to talk to all sides involved and then figure out exactly what's going on. All right, two quick things before I close out here. First, don't forget you can head over to walkamileproject.com, visit any of our podcast pages, and you will see a little widget on the right side that says, send a voice message to be heard on the next GMO Truth. That is where you can join in on the fun. Just make sure you've got a working microphone set up on whatever device you're using to view the website, and then click the Start Recording button. It's really easy, and we will put you on the next podcast. Also, I was planning on discussing your answers to our first GMO question on that last podcast, which was, We've been doing crop modifications, so to speak, for centuries, but is the process for creating the GMOs that were introduced to our food supply in the 1990s drastically different than any of those previous methods? We did not get to that today because the interview with Abe was a lot longer than I thought it would be, so we'll get to that next time, and feel free to submit either your answer to that question, any comments on today's podcast content, or any questions you might have at all. Just record them right at walkamileproject.com, and you'll be doing your part to help us discover the truth, and you'll be on the next GMO Truth podcast. So, all right. Thanks for listening, everyone. We will be back later in April with the next podcast, and I will talk to you then.
Please tell me now, 'cause there's something I should know.
You've been listening to the Walk a Mile Project's GMO Truth podcast. To stay up to date on new podcasts or to learn more and join in on our GMO investigation and upcoming feature film, head over to walkamileproject.com and sign up for free anytime, 24/7. And that is how we discover the truth and change the world together.
Dance when you walk through that door.